Okay, we're live.
We're live. Hello, everybody. Zach, you're looking pretty dark. That's okay.
They gave me a lamp specifically to not be backlit.
You can be backlit if you want. Just pointing it out.
I like the purplish hue. I think it's a cool look, cyberpunky.
So you can't see my sickly glow.
So I'm Aaron Hall. I'm here with the still a little bit dark Zachary New and Rylan Warner. And we're here for the weekly update on immigration. As always, each of us will give a short update on something going on in the world of immigration. And then we will take any questions that are in the comments. And then we'll just get started. So, Ryland, I think you were going to give an update on what's going on with MPP.
Sure. Yeah, so this has been kind of an ongoing saga since the Trump administration to today. Under the Trump administration, MPP, the Migrant Protection Protocols, were put into place, which required asylum seekers entering in from Mexico be actually returned to Mexico. So you might have heard it as the Remain in Mexico rule, I guess, or process. So they needed to remain in Mexico until they were able to have a hearing there to see whether or not they had a legitimate asylum claim. So they set up all these tents down there, and then they would have immigration judges come in through Zoom calls, basically, to listen to these cases and assess whether or not they were legitimate or not. And in the meantime, people who weren't necessarily from Mexico just had to live in Mexico in kind of these migrant towns where a bunch of asylum seekers were. And as you can imagine, this led to a lot of vulnerability. There are these people that are trying to escape persecution, and now instead of getting asylum, they're required to stay in these temporary places where they can easily be targeted by people that know that they don't have many other options. They don't have many people that they can rely on for protection. And so some things that would happen are, for instance, kidnappings and ransom, extortion. They would think that maybe these people are trying to get into the United States to reunite with more wealthy United States family members, and so they can kidnap these people and hold them for ransom. And so it's a very dangerous program for a very vulnerable population. And the Biden administration tried to shut it down. They tried to terminate MPP, but a judge, I think it was in Texas, I'm not sure exactly where, but a judge actually said, nope, you got to keep enforcing it. You have to restart this program and put it back in place, because they stopped doing it for a second there, but then they had to put it all back up and start doing the same exact thing to asylum seekers from Mexico. And under the Biden administration, some people criticized that the Biden administration didn't fight back hard enough against this judge order. But the Biden administration at least said that they were going to try to put in efforts to make it a safer program. They were going to try to provide protection to individuals that were stuck in this temporary staging ground in Mexico for their asylum case to be heard. But just yesterday, a news story came out about these 3 people that were kidnapped when they were put into the MPP program. One of them was able, thankfully, it's a really bittersweet thing because they had to pay a ransom that they were able to get through their family members of $6,000, which is a huge amount of money to people that don't have much at all. But he was able to get out, and he was telling his story of how they were being sent to one of the MPP camps, and some kidnappers stopped the truck, got all 3 of them out, took them to a location where a bunch of people were being held as hostages. At least 20 people were being held in this tiny little house, all for ransom, all by these criminals that, of course, they're being targeted. and this guy was able to get out, thankfully, and then he was able to go to the consulate in Monterrey and able to get protection in the United States after having already escaped this hostage situation. So it's ridiculous that these things are still going on after these years of the MPP program being in place, but they are still going on. So I just wanted to put this out as a reminder that the MPP program is still making people that are vulnerable be placed into a dangerous situation. They are still the victims of crimes in Mexico because they have nowhere else to turn. The Biden administration said that they would make this program safer. They clearly have not done a good enough job yet. Okay, so if the more that we can do to try to support these populations, I think the better. If we could get this struck down again, I mean, it's ridiculous that it was put back in place in the first place. But whatever we can do, I mean, I know as individuals, there's not much that we can do, but at least talking about it, making it public knowledge that this program is ongoing and terrible. That's at least what I can do here on the Joseph and Hall Facebook Live weekly broadcast. So that's what I decided to make my story on today. So if you want more information, that was a Reuters story. It came out yesterday. You could find more information about that there.
I'm like you. It just makes me pretty upset. For a little bit of like context, there's unfortunately a big kidnapping for ransom kind of industry in Mexico, and it affects lots of different people. But obviously, one thing that the people who are kidnapping for ransom and often, assaulting people and sexually assaulting people while they have them, one of the big things, obviously, that they want is people with access to money. And so what the MPP program has done has put these groups of people that everybody knows are trying to get into the United States in camps together. So they're like sitting ducks because not all of them, but many of them will have some connections in the United States, and people with connections in the United States have access to money. And so they're just sitting ducks, and this has been happening since the beginning. There's, the Biden administration says they'll work with Mexico to try to make it safer. Well, it can't be made safe. And so this continues. The other thing that's crazy, if I remember right, is that the judge who struck down the initial rescission of this program, he said not only, so sometimes they can strike it down saying like they didn't follow the APA, which means like they didn't go through the proper procedures or they didn't take in all the considerations, but they can cancel it, but they just didn't do it correctly. And if I remember right, he did say that, but he also said, more importantly, that the statute requires the program, so that there is no way to cancel this program, which is insane because the program never existed until a few years ago, and the statute is from 1996. So he's basically saying every administration, including the Trump administration, was in flagrant violation of this law until 2 years ago when this cockamamie program, or maybe it's a little longer than that ago now, was started. It's insanity. And the Supreme Court is going to be ruling on MPP maybe tomorrow or in the coming weeks. And so that's a scary prospect as well.
Yeah, that was what I was actually going to take this. I was looking at the opinions that came out today. They added a new opinion day that they're going to be issuing opinions tomorrow. So I was certain it was coming out today, and they were saving all the big politically charged topics for the later dates. But it didn't come out today. But yeah, we should be seeing something from the Supreme Court here in really the next couple of weeks.
That's terrifying.
It could either be they read the statute and they go, well, that doesn't make any sense at all. So fingers crossed on that being the outcome. Or, we could get some really weird and terrible decision, which is kind of what we've been seeing for the last little bit here.
Yeah.
I could rant. Today, the Second Amendment case came out rather than the MPP case. So we'll see what politically charged case comes out tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, at least they have those barriers, to protect the people. the court's decisions. Just kidding. I don't know. Never mind. Okay, let's.
Since we started on a dark note, and I'm kind of somewhat continuing that vein, and then Zach will be able to be a little bit more positive at the end. But my update is about another court decision out of Texas on the enforcement priorities. Did you talk about this last week?
No,
okay.
We didn't.
So the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, they have just talking about undocumented people, an estimated 11 million something people here. And so what they've traditionally said is we only have so many resources, so many officers, so many courts, so many lawyers. We can't go after everybody at once. So we're going to make priorities and then try to follow those priorities. That's what the Secretary for DHS, Mayorkas, did earlier this year. Or was it last year? It's all blending together now. Anyway, that he put into place some priorities. And then the prosecutors for DHS, it's called OPLA, they put into place their own document that's supposed to implement the priorities. Well, a few weeks ago, a court in Texas and a judge, specifically a judge named Drew Tipton, issued a decision throwing out the Mayorkas priorities. Basically saying that the statute doesn't allow this kind of prioritization, which again has happens traditionally throughout the years, and the Supreme Court has cited approvingly to DHS's wide discretion in enforcement decisions. But the czar of immigration, Judge Tipton, has decided no. And so what he did was he initially said that his decision throwing out these priorities would go into effect last Friday. He then extended it to this Friday, tomorrow. And so unless his decision is stayed, then this is going to go into effect, and it is going to cause chaos because right now ICE officers and ICE attorneys have very defined things to consider and defined actions to take, and all of this would be thrown out. Now, even if there is no Mayorkas memo because it's thrown out, ICE officers and prosecutors have inherent authority to exercise prosecutorial discretion. So it shouldn't mean that prosecutorial discretion is dead, but it would mean that the guidelines that they rely on and the consistency across the country that these published priorities give would be thrown out the window. And like I said, it would be chaos. So we are watching this because, we have lots of clients who are currently seeking prosecutorial discretion, currently about to receive prosecutorial discretion in court. And we don't know what it would mean. I don't think that the government attorneys even know what it would mean if we go past tomorrow and there's no stay. So we will be, I'm sure, getting further guidance in the weeks that come, but there's going to be a lot of news on that front.
So here's a question. We're seeing a lot of cases being scheduled in immigration court specifically to discuss the prospect of dismissing them pursuant to prosecutorial discretion. How do you see this? Do you see this changing or just being super inconsistent as you were?
It's a little bit strange because Denver's immigration court is a little bit unique in that it sent out notices of hearing that cross-reference a DHS memo. They literally cross-reference the Mayorkas memo and the Doyle memo, which implements it. And so if those memos no longer exist, and the notice of hearing from the immigration court says that the hearing was specifically to discuss the case in the frame of those memos, what happens at that hearing? I don't think that we know that. I assume what would happen would be the parties would still just get together and discuss the case and say, well, do you want to exercise prosecutorial discretion, not relying on those memos, but just on your inherent authority? But how that would play out depends a lot on the posture that the DHS takes once these priorities are removed, and I just think there's a lot of uncertainty there. I assume also that that the court will stop issuing notices of hearing that explicitly reference these DHS documents.
And then one more question. So I was not at the AILA conference. Didn't get to sit down on the panel with Kelly Doyle. That she she was talking to Ayla. Did this come up at all with her? She at all referenced it?
Yes, and I got to I did get to go to the AILA conference in New York and got to participate in that panel. And yes, there's a lot of discussion about this, and I would say that they did not yet have answers on what would come next. I think that they were very much hoping that the Fifth Circuit would stay Judge Tipton's order. I think that there will be a great case for a stay, and I haven't seen the briefs, but I'm assuming it's already been briefed and we're waiting on a decision on it. But the Fifth Circuit is the Fifth Circuit, so I'm not counting on it. And I think that that they, well, I think publicly she said, the principal legal advisor Doyle said that they have inherent authority to exercise prosecutorial discretion. So I don't think that they think that it's going away just because this judge makes this decision, but it's going to change a lot of things.
All right, so I guess maybe the happy note now.
Let's go to Zach for better news.
Mine's gonna be quick though. Mine's gonna be a short little announcement. So last week, Luke went over the last 10 years of DACA. It was DACA's 10-year anniversary. He did, kind of a really in-depth dive about where it was, how it started, what kind of like the developments happened since then, including the attempted rescission of DACA by the Trump administration, and I guess after that happened, almost immediately, we got an announcement from the White House saying that they're finally going to be issuing these final regulations that implement DACA on a more permanent basis. So for those of you who didn't tune in last week, DACA is based off of an executive order. So it's not really a law. It's not something that's on the books that I could cite to in a legal brief where I say, when you look at this particular regulation, there's DACA. It's based off of, again, the president, kind of in the same way that Aaron was talking about DHS as a whole, being the chief prosecutor and saying this is how we're going to allocate our resources, and we're not going to target these specific individuals for removal proceedings. This is for individuals who came here as children. Yeah, so it's all based off of an executive order, and when the Trump administration was trying to rescind DACA, they were basically told, you got to go through the proper channels for getting rid of a regulation, not in the same way that you would for an executive order typically. And then I guess to memorialize DACA in a more permanent way, the Biden administration was going to have to implement it as regulations. So back in January, they actually finished up what they needed to do. It's this process called notice and comment, where you put out your proposed regulations. This is what we would like to do. This is why we would like to do it. This is the impact of these regulations. And then solicit comments from the public on the impact, how they view the regulations, any particular problems that maybe the agency didn't consider. And then the agency has to take all those comments, look through them, and before issuing these final regulations, kind of deal with those comments. So the final notice and comment period, where public comments were extended to the Department of Homeland Security, finished up in January, and we've kind of just been waiting since then. We're kind of just, a lot of us, I think I've said this on a previous Facebook Live, we're just like, where the hell are they? It's been a long time. You can get through your comments. Issue the regulations already, because a lot of people are hurting while we have this interim policy. So finally, we have an announcement from the White House that they will be issuing these final regulations in August. I don't have much detail beyond the fact that they're going to be coming out. As soon as I know, that'll probably be my next Facebook Live topic. So we can talk about any differences that are in the final regulations that are going to be put on the books versus what's in the current policy, and how things are currently working. There's certainly problems with the way DACA currently works, and hopefully these final regulations will fix them. But I suppose it remains to be seen. But either way, having DACA memorialized in regulation makes it law. It makes it law rather than pronouncement by the president, and makes it a lot more difficult to get rid of, a lot easier to apply for example, and a lot more protection for these individuals who certainly need it. So looking forward to that announcement, looking forward to that final issuance of those regulations, and looking forward to DACA being law of the land in a way that it really hasn't been for the last 10 years.
To what extent, Zach, does it being codified in the regulations, does that make it invulnerable to the inevitable litigation that's going to come against it?
Not invulnerable, but it makes it a lot better guarded, I suppose. So when you have just this broad pronouncement by the president, you could say that kind of like what we saw with this Doyle memo with the enforcement priorities, where it doesn't comply with the law generally, and so you can ignore it altogether. Here we would have much more targeted challenges where we'd say, okay, well, this law is unconstitutional in some way, or it doesn't comply with the Administrative Procedure Act, or is in contrast to the Immigration and Nationality Act. So it doesn't insulate it entirely, but it gives it a lot more protections, a lot more. I mean, it's on the books, and you're challenging a law that's on the books, as opposed to just a general policy, a general issuance of how resources should be allocated and things along those lines. I also think it makes it a lot more difficult to get rid of just from a future administration. We have this on the books. This has been used as an actual regulation, as opposed to, well, this is an executive order. I'm getting rid of this executive order. We saw in the Trump case, the big reason behind the failure to get rid of DACA there was that the Trump administration had improper reasons for getting rid of it. They said that it was illegal when the Supreme Court said, well, it's not illegal. So that's not a good enough reason to get rid of it. If your reason is that it's illegal and you're wrong, it's still on the books. Here, we'd have to go through either an entire new notice and comment period, or you'd have to sue about it being in violation of, either the statute or the Constitution, which is a much taller order, I suppose.
Yeah, and I would hope that that's part of the reason why we've had such a delay here, is that they're trying to think of all the ways that it could be sued over. And so they're trying to preempt all of those possible ways. I mean, there is, of course, the notice and comment, so that allows the public to express what they're thinking about it, how it might already be in violation of the law. So trying to address the most legitimate of those concerns, and then thinking of any other ways that people might try to sue them about it. So yes, it's been a long time in the making rather, but hopefully that leads to a more secure and lawsuit proof regulation. But yeah, we'll have to see.
I think.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's not to say that's going to be, entirely safe. We ourselves have sued over regulations that have come out after notice and comment and said, for example, you haven't taken into consideration the comments sufficiently, or your reasoning is flawed. One example is this is really in the weeds of immigration law, but their wage levels for specific jobs. We were saying your methodology was improper, and because of that, this whole law is inherently flawed. So if we're able to do that for certain regulations, certainly people who are in opposition to DACA can make similar challenges. So yeah, the hope would be, like you said, Ryan, that they really took these comments into consideration. They really understood that this is going to have a day one lawsuit against it, and are prepared for that.
I have no doubt that they are doing their best to make it litigation proof. I think that putting it into the regulations is a good move, and so I'm happy about it. I'm happy about the announcement. I'm happy about a little bit of certainty and regularity that should bring the process, and it should actually, I would hope, give actually additional rights to applicants. I am not very confident that a hand-picked judge somewhere in the country by the anti-immigrant groups or states or attorney generals will not find that it is in excess of this authority allowed by statute. And so I still think that litigation is going to be a problem, but what can you do? You got to try to do your best and put forth good arguments, and hopefully the courts, at least the appellate courts, will see through the craziness and rule our way.
So, do you guys see the eligibility dates changing at all in the future for DACA? I mean, right now you have to have been in the United States by a certain date, and that's kind of reflective of a number of things in the past. For certain immigrant categories, you need to have been in the United States by X date in order to qualify. Some people they've been in the United States since they were a child, and they are not eligible at this point. Do you think that this new regulation might address that at all, or will it remain the same eligibility criteria? I know we don't know, but do you have any guesses?
I've at least heard through the grapevine that the dates aren't changing. I don't know that for sure, but I've heard rumblings, rumors that they're keeping the same dates.
That's crazy to me.
I know it's
the date you have to have been in the country by is June 2007.
So I think you're actually not. There could be. Are we now at the point where you could no longer be an initial DACA applicant because you just physically could not?
Yeah, and it's funny because like in sometimes in news articles or in popular culture, people refer to DACA grantees as like DACA kids. The oldest, my math might be up, but I think the oldest DACA recipients are turning 42 this year, maybe 41. So like these are people who like, they're not necessarily that young anymore. They're, they have families, they have mortgages. Like it's not, they've been in this limbo for so long, but I think, some are going to have grandkids soon. Some probably already do. It's insane. So I'm disappointed they didn't move the date, but hopefully those rumors are wrong.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. And then also hopefully we get a DREAM Act passed in Congress. This is just an interesting side note on bipartisan immigration bills. I think there's been somewhere, it's either 11 or 13, I can't remember off the top of my head, DREAM Acts that have been introduced in Congress, which would basically put DACA into statute rather than regulation, which is even a greater level of protection. And there's bipartisan support every time, but they have never passed. It's just like both sides don't want to give the other side a win. And so that's why we had President Obama initially do this in an executive order, and now we're having President Biden put this into a regulation through notice of comment rather than having a statute saying folks get some sort of legal status and perhaps some pathway to citizenship, because this is also not going to lead to citizenship. That's another kind of common misconception folks have about DACA. It's a deferred action, meaning that there's not going to be a removal action taken against you, but it's not a pathway to citizenship. You don't get a green card out of it. You get work authorization and you get potential for travel authorization, but you don't get a green card. You don't get citizenship, and there's no path to that through DACA. So for an ultimate fix, we'll need Congress to, I guess, finally see the light and stop playing political games over these types of things. But I guess that's a stay tuned type of thing. Who knows when that'll happen.
Yeah. Have you guys seen the movie In the Heights? It's a musical that was on Broadway.
I want to.
Yeah. The very end of that movie is this guy, spoilers everyone, but this guy wins the lottery, and then he decides to give that money to basically his nephew to get DACA, and then their final thing is and then maybe one day a green card. And I'm like, I hope that is true one day, but current DACA as it is not a green card. And so the fact that it is so limited and doesn't even get you lawful permanent resident status is it's frustrating to say the least, but at least something. So you got to focus on every time when talking about DACA. At least it's something. So, and hopefully it'll be something more secure. So thanks for that update, Zach. To leave on a happier note, sorry. This was supposed. That's why we put yours at the end to be.
I mean, it is a happy note, though. I mean, we are getting, protection for folks who have really need it, and it's something official in a way that it hasn't been for 10 years. So, yeah, it is a happy note. It is a good note. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, like that whole thing. This is definitely good. Could there be improvements here or there? Can we point to things that we would like to happen? Absolutely. And I think that we could do that with any new regulation that's going in the positive direction, or any new statute that's being introduced. But if it's a positive step, it's a positive step. And sometimes these incremental changes are all that we need to get to our ultimate goal.
For sure. For sure.
Well, all right. I think that's all we have for the day.
Yeah.
If either of you have anything else you wanted to get to?
No, I think we're good. No questions today. If you have any other questions for us, feel free to tune in next week and leave us a question. I know that somebody did that last week. They had a question and they weren't able to quite get it out on stream, so they called me afterwards. I got a call from them, and I'm happy to take your calls too, depending on the circumstance. But yeah, feel free.
All right. Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.